Hi everyone, today I will talk about the relationship between interval timing, timing uncertainty, and decision optimization. We will see data from both humans and non-human animals in similar tasks. We define interval timing as the ability to perceive, to remember, and to organize behavior around periods that range from seconds to minutes. Now, this ability is observed across many species of animals with similar psychophysical properties, and one of these properties is called the scalar property. Scalar property dictates that the standard deviation of time responses is a constant proportion of the mean of the time responses for different target intervals within individuals. Um, In other words, the coefficient of variation of the time responses is constant for different target intervals within individuals. If you look at the figure on the left, bottom left, I am illustrating this property here. As you can see, the spread of the distributions for longer target intervals become wider and wider. And this is actually one of the ways of accounting for Weber's law in the domain of interval timing. Now, I will be relying on this property during the rest of my talk while determining the reward rate maximizing decision strategies. One of the predictions of scalar property is that if you express time response curves on a relative time scale for different target intervals, then they should superimpose. And this is indeed what happens in the data. If you look at the three panels on the right, these are data that were collected from rats, humans, and mice, respectively, with different target intervals. And as you can see, invariably, the time response curves superimpose in all of these species of animals, supporting the scalar property, ubiquity of the scalar property of interval timing. Now, in order to demonstrate how timing uncertainty and its scalar property determines reward rate maximizing decision strategies, I will exemplify this in terms of a very simple task called the differential reinforcement of flow rates of responding. Now, in this task, we basically ask subjects to space their responses for a minimum amount of time. So, for instance, in a DRL 5-second schedule, the subject might be pressing a button or a lever, get a reward. To be able to get the next reward contingent upon the next response, the subject has to wait for at least 5 seconds. And if it doesn't, that response resets the elapsed time with no reward. But if it waits for at least 5 seconds before pressing the lever again or button again, that response resets the elapsed time with reward. Again, this is a very simple task that you can use in humans and rats and mice. If you look at the inter-response times, and here I am exemplifying them from a representative from a representative rat and from a representative human uh, on the left and on the right, respectively. Inter-response times are typically inverse Gaussian distributed. Um, Now, that is an important observation, but due to time constraints, I'll not get into why. But I'd like to emphasize a commonality between these two figures here. As you can see, both the representative rat and the representative human have mean inter-response times that are longer than the minimum wait time. Now, you can say that this could be due to the misestimation of time in this task, but as you can guess, I will argue that this is an adaptive bias in response to timing uncertainty for maximizing the reward rate in this task. Now, what is reward rate in the DRL task? It is the probability of getting a reward for a mean, for a target wait time, divided by that mean uh, wait time. Um, So you can basically increase the probability of getting rewarded by aiming to wait longer. But in that case, you will be also increasing the time cost of that reward. You might try to decrease the time cost of the reward, but in that case, you will be decreasing the probability of getting rewarded because uh, although you would be aiming to wait for, let's say, a fixed amount of time from one trial to the next, sometimes you'll be early, sometimes you'll be late due to your endogenous timing uncertainty. So, reward rate maximization in this task requires you to find the optimal balance between the probability of getting rewarded and the time cost of that reward. And I am demonstrating this graphically on the bottom left. Here you can see the expected reward rate curves for different levels of timing uncertainty. Here gamma stands for coefficient of variation. So when you have a gamma of zero point 0.1, it means you're a precise timer. When you have a gamma of zero point 0.5, it means that you are not a precise timer. As you can notice, although the test parameters are the same, although the minimum wait time is the same for these different hypothetical subjects, the optimal wait time, which you can find by finding the peak location of the expected reward rate curves, differ for different participants with different levels of timing uncertainty. For instance, a precise timer should aim at closer to the minimum wait time to maximize reward rate, whereas an imprecise timer should wait longer. And the envelope of these curves is basically the optimal performance curve. Now let's see how humans perform in this task. Now, um, these data come from a study where we did not give any instructions to the humans. They came to the lab. We said, "Here's a button, and just try to get rewards." That was it. And they were tested over many sessions. There were two different conditions. In one condition, participants were tested such that early responses were not penalized. That's the top panel. And in another condition, participants were penalized for early responses. Um, Now, the color maps here are expected reward rates for different target intervals and for different levels of timing uncertainty. Um, and the ridge of this curve, which is denoted by the black curve, is the optimal performance curve in this task. And as you can see, the optimal wait time changes as a function of the timing uncertainty, as a function of CV. Now, its symbol here is the mean wait time of one participant. So each symbol corresponds to one participant. I think all of you would agree with me on that participants are closely following that optimal performance curve. Um, the optimal performance curve obviously differs in a condition where we do penalize early responses. Um, and here too, each symbol corresponds to a single participant. And here as well, participants are closely following the optimal performance curve. Indeed, in doing so, participants in this task ensured more than 99% of the maximum possible expected gain that they could earn given their own level of timing uncertainty. Now we also tested rats with different schedules. We went up to DRL 56-second schedule, and here the same optimal performance curve is shown this way here, and again each circle corresponds to an individual participant, an individual subject. Um, as you can see, up to DRL 14-second schedule, rats actually very closely follow the optimal performance curve. The curvature in their responses across participants is as a function of timing uncertainty, kind of follows the curvature in the optimal performance curve with a bias. Um, you see a similar thing in humans. So in this task, we tested humans with instructions, again with different targets, with different DRL schedules. Individual participants, again, closely follow with a bias. the optimal performance curve that is defined as a function of the level of timing uncertainty. In this task, if you consider the diagnostic schedule up to 14 seconds in rats, you can see that in most schedules, participants ensure more than 95% of the maximum possible expected gain that they can earn for their own timing uncertainty level. You see a similar level of performance in mice. Uh, we see similar results in the numerical analog of this task. In this task, instead of asking participants to wait for a minimum amount of time, we ask them to press a lever for a minimum number of times before claiming the reward. And optimality analysis suggests that mice can optimize their numerical errors, taking near normative account of the level of their own endogenous numerical uncertainty. Now, here's a little bit more complex task. Here, we ask participants to respond as close as possible to a target interval, but not too late. So, in order to incentivize it, the amount of reward that can be earned increases exponentially as a function of time up to the target interval, but it goes to zero after that. So we call this beat the clock task. We tested humans in this task. Here, the optimal performance curve is denoted by this bold uh, black curve, which again is the ridge of the expected reward rate surface that's defined as a function of the level of timing uncertainty and different aim points. And each circle is an individual participant. As you can see, human participants closely follow the optimal strategy in this task as well. And by doing so, they earn nearly 100% of the maximum possible expected gain. We tested mice in a similar task, and here you can see the expected reward rate curve. The red dot denotes the optimal wait time, average optimal wait time, and the black curve is the average empirical wait time. As you can see, they are very close, and these mice ensure around 95% of the maximum possible expected gain given the level of their own endogenous timing uncertainty. We see similar results in different tasks, more complex tasks. These findings are actually observed again and again with different time intervals and with different tasks in different species of animals. For those who are interested, I just listed a few uh, publications here. Now, one of the questions is how is timing uncertainty integrated into decision making such that we can maximize reward rate? Now, one possibility is that maybe participants can keep track of the direction and magnitude of errors in their estimates, which can be aggregated to form a representation of timing variability. I refer to this ability as metric error monitoring, and when you test humans, in task where you ask them to reproduce an interval, and then we ask them, do you think you reproduce shorter than the target or longer than the target? They seem to know better than chance if they were shorter than the target or longer than the target. And we asked them how confident they were in their reproduction, and we observed that the confidence ratings decrease as a function of the absolute distance between the reproduced time interval and the target time interval. We have run this experiment many times in humans. Other groups have done it too. And in all of these experiments, invariably what we see is that humans can keep track of both the direction and the magnitude of their timing errors. So to conclude, humans and non-human animals can take near normative account of their timing uncertainty in temporal decision making and numerical decision making. They can take into account of their own numerical uncertainty. This is a ubiquitous feature of temporal decision making. Incorporation of timing uncertainty into decisions might be mediated by temporal error monitoring. And one of the outstanding questions is whether non-human animals can also keep track of their timing errors. Thank you.